Hello from Running Dog Studio. I've been doing a little bit of weaving lately on my inkle loom, and I've been trying something new that I have not done before, and I thought I would share it with you because I haven't found a whole lot of information or instructional videos on it. I think I'm doing it right, but if anybody is looking for some instruction and they find it, they might find it useful, or they might notice something that I'm doing wrong and they can let me know. So I have been using, this is my inkle loom here. It's an Ashford. I've had it for a few years now, and I've done a bit of card weaving, tablet weaving, that type of thing, and I've done some regular pickup stuff on it and some Baltic weaving. And this time I thought that I would try something from this book, which is, if anybody is new to weaving on an inkle loom, this is a must-have. This Inkle Pattern Directory by Ann Dixon. It's wonderful. And on page 95, they have monk's belt. And the patterns look quite lovely, and I thought I'd give it a try. So that's what I have been doing lately, and I thought I would just do a little video here, and let's see how it goes. Let me just zoom in here a little bit, and we will get ready for this. So I have done a little bit. It might not be the neatest, but this is the first and only time I have ever tried this. But what you end up with is a woven part on the top, which is thicker. You're going to use I've used some acrylic yarn here, which is a fingerling weight, and some number 10 cotton for the background threads. The pattern threads are in this fingerling weight that I happen to have around. The problem I had noticed with the fingerling is it is a little sticky, and it sticks to the cotton sometimes, so sometimes it doesn't work all that well. But I've made a few mistakes and blunders in this, but this is kind of what it looks like, trying some of the different patterns. Now, of course, I went to the most difficult pattern that they had to try for the very first time, which might not have been the best thing, but there you go. Go big or go home. So here we are, and I have just started again at the beginning of a pattern. We'll start with the warping sequence for the monk's belt is a little different than you might have seen before. The sequence looks something like this. There we go. So it's easier for you to see. So in the book, this is directly from what they have in the book. There's you have your heddled threads on the top, and you have your unheddled on the bottom. And what you will notice is that here, the blue in this case, that's going to be your pattern threads. But what you're going to notice that you might not have done before is that you will have 3 heddled threads in a row. Normally you have heddled, unheddled, heddled, unheddled, and so on. But in this case, you're going to have a thicker pattern thread, which is heddled, and then you're going to have a background thread, which is also heddled, and then another pattern thread. So if we look here, I've got this, the first bit here, you'll see it has ×2. So that means that your very first thread that you're going to tie onto your loom, this very first one right over here, that is a heddled thread. And then it's going to be followed by an unheddled thread. And you're going to do that 2 times. So this little sequence right here, which I have labeled A, you're going to repeat that twice. So heddled, unheddled, heddled, unheddled. And then you're going to move to this next block right there, which is B, and that has 1 heddled thread in it. So B, 1 heddled thread. That's it. Now we're going to go into this sequence right here, between here and here, and you're going to do that sequence 10 times. And this is the part now that's going to have your pattern threads in it. And you're going to repeat C 10 times. So that's from, you'll have an unheddled, your thicker pattern thread, a background thread, and a thicker pattern thread, and you're going to do that 10 times, from here to here 10 times. And remembering each time that those 3 are heddled. 1 heddled, 3 unheddled. 1 heddled, I think I said that backwards. 1 unheddled, 3 heddled, 1 unheddled, 3 heddles, and so on 10 times. When you have that sequence done, you will then have all of these pattern threads done, and you will be right here with just those remaining ones on the end to do. And that's D. Repeat 3 times. So you have an unheddled and a heddled, unheddled, heddled, unheddled, heddled 3 times. And when you've got it all tied up at the end, you'll have something that's going to look like this, with your border threads on either side. That would be these, and all of your pattern threads in the inside. And what it looks like with that unusual sequence at the top with the pattern threads is, here is my heddled threads. These are all of my heddled threads right here. And you'll notice you're going to have that background thread in between. There's a background thread, 2 pattern threads, a background thread, 2 pattern threads, and so on. The only ones that's going to differ is the very last sequence, where you'll have 1 over here and you'll have 1 over here. If I pop up the shed for the unheddled threads, this is what they look like. You can distinctly see your border threads on either side, and those thicker pattern threads kind of push these apart a bit. So that's what, there's your unheddled, and these are all of your heddled threads. So that's your sequence for warping your loom right there. Let me see. Yes, and it is important that you're going to want a thicker thread for your pattern threads. I think this would be lovely in something that was a smoother than this acrylic yarn that I've got, but you know, I had to try, and I had it on hand, so that's what I did. Reading the pattern, I've got this one right here. This is the one that I just started. I only have the 2 bottom rows done. The shaded in areas that you see, those represent your pattern threads. This is a fairly slow moving thing to weave, because every row you're going to have to manipulate the threads, either dropping them down or picking them up. And you're going to have to do that for all of the pattern threads throughout. So for example, in the first row in this pattern, you've got 3 pattern threads that you're going to have that are not going to show in the sequence. There's the 2 that will show at the top, 2 more that will show at the top, 2 pattern threads. So depending on whether you're in the heddled or unheddled position, that will determine whether you have to pick them up or drop them down. And I'll show you what I mean now in a moment. What I did to help me out, hang on, I dropped my pencil on the floor, of course. So here we are, and I have been putting in, when I've started, just as a reminder, I mark on the rows which ones are heddled, up like that, just as a reminder for me, because sometimes you can kind of get a little out of sequence and forget which row you're on. So let me lay this down here. So I have done, and I will zoom in here. That's not zooming. I will zoom in and bring this up and show you right here. I have the first 2 lines of that pattern already done. So we are going to start the 3rd row, and we shall start the 3rd row, which is this one right here. So we're going to have, I'm starting in the heddled position, so with my pattern thread showing, And the first, I need 3 pattern threads, followed by dropping down 4, picking up or keeping 2, dropping down 2, and let me just show you what that means in practice. So here are my heddled threads. These are all the ones that are in the heddles. And for this round, the pattern threads are the ones I need to keep up. Any spot in my pattern that is blank, it's not shaded in, those are the pattern threads that I need to get rid of. They need to drop them down. So I need 3. So here's the first 3. And in between there is a white thread. I'm just going to move that over here. Now according to my pattern I have 4. Let's see if I can hold this up and not drop my threads. So I just picked up these 3. Then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 threads that I have to drop. I don't need them in this sequence. So I'm just going to let them go. That's 1, 2. This heddled background thread, just move it over and drop down the next 2. Here's a background thread. I'm just going to move that over here. Then I need to pick up, or not pick up, but I need to keep 2 of those next pattern threads. There they are. Move those over here, along with this background thread. Then I have to drop down 2. 1, 2. There's another background thread I'll move over. Then I have to keep 2 pattern threads. I shall move those over here, along with the next background. Then I have 4 pattern threads that I have to drop down. There's 2 of them. Pass that one, just keep that over here. Drop down the next 2. That's 4 down. Move that white thread over. And then I should have 3 pattern threads left. Thankfully I do. There's 2. Move that over. And 3. Now let's have a look at what we've got, just to make sure. So here we are. I should have 3 pattern threads. 3, 2, 2, and 3. So let's see what we have here. I have 3. There's 2 right here, and another 2, and 3. So we're only, when you're counting, you're only talking about the pattern threads that are shown on the surface. The rest we dropped down into the shed below. Time to weave. Let's put our shuttle through. Let's just beat that. And it's important to beat fairly hard and snug this up pretty tight. So that was a heddled row. Change the shed. Slide that down and give that a good tug. And that's that row done. And now we have the unheddled threads. So let's go up to our next row. This time we have a sequence of 2 pattern threads, 4 in between. So we got 2, 2, 2, and 2. It's only the pattern threads we need to worry about, and these are in our unheddled layer. So this time we need to pick up those threads. So we're going to look down below. This might be hard to see, but this is my top layer. There's no pattern threads in the top at all. So let's open those threads and look below. Here's our first 2 threads. We only need the pattern ones. Let's pick up that one, and let's pick up the next one. So there's our 2. And then we have a space of 4. So we'll move the threads on the top, our background threads. We'll move them aside so we can look below. There's 2. I don't need those. I'll move this one over here. And there's the next 2. They're in sequences of 2. So that's the 4 we don't need. We're going to need to pick up the next 2. This one and this one. If only I had an extra hand. There we go. Move that background thread over. Look at my pattern. Now we need to skip 4. Down here, there's 2. This is my top thread. I'm just going to move that over here. This is below. That's the next 2. We don't need those. We'll move this over. Now, our sequence telling us we need the next 2. 1, I don't need that background, and I need that one. And now we're going to skip 4 again. There's 2. We don't need those. This is the top thread. Move that background thread over. There's the next 2 underneath. We don't need those. Move that background thread over. And here we have the last 2 threads. This is kind of in a group of 3. There's a pattern thread, a background thread, and a pattern thread. We only need to pick up the pattern threads. So there they are, and let's move our border over. I would suggest having a look at what you've picked up before you weave to make sure that you've got the right pattern threads picked up, because sometimes they stick together or you might have picked up the wrong one, and it's fairly easy to do that. So let's have a look. Let me pick up our pattern. Let's have a look at it. We are in this row right above the ruler. 2 threads, 4 down, 2, 4 down, 2, 4 down, and 2. And we have 2, skipping 4, 2, skipping 4, 2, skipping 4, and 2. So we're good. You can see why this takes a while. So just pull our thread through, and I have a little loop on this side, and I'm pulling it down, and I'm just going to pinch there just until I'm waiting until the loop comes up snug with that last thread. You don't want to pull too hard or you'll have it pushing in like this, and it'll look kind of wonky. So that was an unheddled shed. So now we need the heddled thread. So we have to push those down, and you can even rock the shuttle back and forth. It looks much better when the threads are compressed fairly tightly. So that's the next line. So we've now done a heddled row and an unheddled row, and we are back again to the heddled row. This is why on the side of my rows I have the heddled lines marked. It just helps me keep track, because sometimes when you're picking them up you go, did I just pick those up on an unheddled row or a heddled row? So the next one is going to be this row. Let's do one more. So in this case we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to have 6 threads, 6 pattern threads over here that we need to drop down. We need to, they're not needed in this row. There's the first one, let it go. The background threads, these white ones, just push them over. There's the next one, that's 2, 3, move that over. That's 4, 5, move that over, and that's 6. So now there's no pattern threads now, they're all dropped below. What's next? I need to keep the next 2 pattern threads. There's the first one. There's a background thread, I'm just going to move that over, and there's the pattern thread. So we have 2 pattern threads on the top picked up. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to drop down the next 4 pattern threads. That's 1. I'll move that over. 2, 3. There's a quarter thread. Move that over and drop that down. So that's 4 down. Then I need to keep the next 2. That's 1. And that's the 2. And I need to drop down 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. There should be 6 left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So here we have it. Our pattern calls for, let me bring this up without dropping that. Here we are right here. We only needed 4 pattern threads. These 2 and these 2. So there's 6 we dropped here. We kept 2. We dropped down 4. We kept these 2 and we dropped down those 6. And this is what we have right here. So now it's time to weave. Take our shuttle, pass it through. I keep that little loop on this side and I'm going to push that thread down. And again, I'm just going to kind of hold my thumb and forefinger right here as I'm pulling on this loop. And I'm pulling it just so that loop comes snug with this side. You don't want to bump there and you don't want a loose thread there. I change my shed. Here are all my unheddled threads and I push that down. And we're on to the next row. And again, I'm not perfect at this, but this thick, sometimes I notice that the threads aren't as close together as I would like. But there you have it. That's how to weave the monk's belt pattern. Is there anything else that I should tell you about that I have learned so far? Oh yeah, this is a slow process. It gets a little quicker as you're going. Let me see. If I was going to do this again, I would use a smoother yarn for the pattern thread so that they don't stick. A few things I have noticed. Up here, when I'm when I am advancing my my belt on the loom, I've noticed as I'm pulling it, these threads are getting stuck in my heddles, just as the wear and tear. You can see little bits of fluff up here. Occasionally, just spread apart if you're having that problem. Spread apart so you can see it catches on some of these. Spread them apart to make it easier to advance your loom so that they don't get all caught up. Another thing that might be helpful, if it would make it any easier for you, is your border threads. If you had a heddle, your little heddle strings, if you had those in a different color, just to distinguish your border threads, if that would make it any easier for you when starting off. But give it a try and see how it goes for you. This is the first time I have ever attempted this, and there's my result. It's not bad. I can see some mistakes in there, but yeah, it's not too bad. I noticed that this is actually an off-white color, but a bit of that orange has kind of seeped into it a little bit. But you have to try things and see how you make out. If anybody happens to see this video and they realize I'm not doing it right, please let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.